My name is Brooke Thomson, and this is my Intro to Medical Geography final video presentation. For this project, I chose to discuss the health topic of female breast cancer. So let's start by introducing what exactly breast cancer is. As defined by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, breast cancer is a disease in which cells in the breast grow out of control. There are several different types of breast cancer, with their classification dependent on which type of cells in the breast the cancer cells originally grow within. The two most common kinds of breast cancer are invasive ductal carcinoma and invasive lobular carcinoma, with invasive ductal carcinoma being the most common form of invasive breast cancer, accounting for 80% of all breast cancer diagnoses. As shown in the diagram on the right, you can see the basic anatomy of a female breast, including the varying cellular types, the lobular, the luciferous ducts, fatty tissues, and muscle cells. The invasive ductal carcinoma occurs when the cells lining the interior of the milk duct become cancerous cells and begin growing and spreading to surrounding breast tissues and then beyond. Historically, breast cancer has been around since ancient times. The ancient Egyptians are credited with first noting breast cancer around 3,500 years ago. Additionally, Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, around 460 BC, established the roots of the word cancer, and they're derived from the Greek word karkinos, or crab, because he thought the tumors seemed to have tentacles like the legs of a crab. Furthermore, and continuing with our introduction to breast cancer and its relevant background information, what are the potential consequences of breast cancer? Well, breast cancer results in a variety of intensive and commonly invasive medical treatments, including chemotherapy, radiation therapy, hormone therapy, and targeted therapy as well. Surgical options are often explored by patients and their doctors as well, such as a lumpectomy, which involves removing the tumor mass itself, or a mastectomy, which involves removing the entire breast or even both breasts. Also, many forms of breast cancer carry the risk of metastasis, which is where the cancer spreads from its primary site to other regions of the body, like the lymph nodes, brain, bone, liver, lungs, and more. So why should we be concerned? Well, breast cancer is the most common cancer in women, and this is regardless of race and ethnicity. Also, breast cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in women 35 to 54 years of age. Thus, due to its high incidence, performing adequate amounts of scientific research to broaden our knowledge of the disease is crucial. The overall geographic distribution of incidence of new female breast cancer cases for all ages and all races and ethnicities in the United States, based on data gathered in 2016 by the CDC and the U.S. Cancer Statistics Working Group, gives the following distribution as shown in this map. Notice the northeastern states like New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, they all have the highest number of new cases of female breast cancer. And also take note that other states like Texas, Florida, and California are in the highest category as well. It's also noteworthy to see that Massachusetts is characterized in the second highest category, reporting 3,494 to about 6,000 new cases of female breast cancer in 2016. For this final presentation, the GIS-based case study I chose to discuss is titled Breast Cancer Risk and Historical Exposure to Pesticides from Wide Area Applications Assessed with GIS. And this article and case study was published in March of 2004 in the Environmental Health Perspectives Journal. For this research study, with regards to the conceptual design, the primary objective is to determine if an association exists between female breast cancer incidence and wide area pesticide application exposure in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, through the implementation of modern GIS technology. This study places a strong focus on the habitat vertex and studies factors in the natural part of the habitat, like the presence of pests that are indigenous to Cape Cod, and trying to eradicate those with man-made pesticides for both recreational and agricultural purposes. Also, with regards to the built sector of the habitat, residential human settlement patterns in Cape Cod and their proximity to these wide area pesticide application regions. There's also some factors within the population vertex that are addressed in this study, such as the fact that all the study cases and controls are female gender only, and they're all above the age of 18 years of age. And there's a slight focus on the behavior vertex as well, considering the human behavior leads to the amount of exposure and the duration of exposure to these hazards of pesticides. Further, the methodology design of this research involves a case control study comparing 1,165 female breast cancer cases residing in Cape Cod with about 1,000 women residing outside of Cape Cod but still in Massachusetts. Also, this study is a population study zeroing in a small portion of the population to hopefully gain useful insight regarding the larger whole of the population. And the methods they use to gather data and assess the research findings vary from include studying the population. They conduct interviews with the cases and the controls. They also do GIS assessment to measure the exposure of these case and control individuals. And then they implement geocoding of the residential addresses, and then eventually calculate the exposure and perform other forms of data analysis. The study area is specifically within Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and it's primarily a coastal region in the northeastern portion of the United States. And according to the case study, Cape Cod is of particular interest because of a history of elevated breast cancer incidence and its distinctive pesticide use. Also, the article states that data from Massachusetts Data Registry showed that age-adjusted breast cancer incidence was approximately 20% higher on Cape Cod than in the surrounding state from the years 1982 to 1994. Also, the map on the right from a previous study is a figure that illustrates research performed by the MDR showing female breast cancer standardized incidence ratios throughout the Cape Cod region from the period of 1995 to 2002. Continuing on with data collection, we will discuss how the data was collected for disease and exposure, and also how they implemented GIS within their study. And first, the breast cancer cases, they were verified by the MCR, the Massachusetts Cancer Registry, and those cases were linked to the residential addresses. They were also categorized by different time periods to cross-reference the pesticides that were used during those periods of time, which they were able to use historical records and also GIS analysis to assess these exposures between the Cape Cod residents and the areas where these pesticides were recorded and widespread applications were performed. Then their addresses were incorporated into GIS through what's known as geocoding, and basically that linked their addresses to precise longitude and latitude coordinates so they could better assess the data. And then they calculated the relative exposure intensities for both the cases and the controls of the study and used those numbers for direct comparison. And as far as the results and discussion goes, this is table 6, and it basically shows the number and percentage of possible exposure years for those women living on Cape Cod with the geocoding already implemented into the data. And just looking across in the different categories, comparing the cases and controls, you can even just quickly see that there's not a lot of variance between the case and controls, and there was not um, any sort of significant difference observed. On here is table 8, another table generating and illustrating some of the results that they found in this study. And once again, similar to the last slide, this table shows associations between the exposure of the cases and controls, and also the wide area application of the less persistent pesticides, and also takes into account a 5-year latency period um, to see if there was, a delayed effect per se of the cancer incidence coming up after the exposure. And once again, you can see there is not really a significant um, difference, and no significant association can be made in comparing the cases with the controls. And finally, conclusions and limitations. So basically, their case study found that there's no overall pattern of association between pesticide use and breast cancer, and they didn't find any consistent dose response trends throughout the different categories that they studied, even though they implemented new GIS technologies. So the results are consistent with results of many recent studies on these pesticides, and kind of concur that there is no association found as of yet. And some of the limitations include the uncertainty of the precise residential locations, also unrecorded tree pest and mosquito control events, and some other forms of lack of information that they needed to really complete a full unlimited version of the study. And here are my references, my photo credits, and thank you.